Okay, I don't even know where to start, so I'll just say this. I've been married to my wife for 6 years, together for 9. We're both in our early 30s. No kids. From the outside, we looked fine. Stable jobs, decent apartment, the kind of couple people assume will make it. But the last year, something felt off. At first, it wasn't anything dramatic. Just distance. Conversations getting shorter. Her tone getting sharper. She'd snap over small things like me forgetting to buy milk, but then act like nothing happened 10 minutes later. That kind of emotional whiplash messes with your head more than constant fighting. She also started lying. Not big, obvious lies at first, just little inconsistencies. Saying she was working late, but then forgetting and mentioning she went out for drinks with coworkers. When I pointed it out, she'd brush it off like I was overthinking. And yeah, I started doubting myself. The weird part, every time I tried to talk about it, she'd flip it back on me. Why are you always so suspicious? Not everything is about you. You're exhausting lately. So I backed off. I told myself I was imagining things. That maybe this is just what long-term relationships look like when the spark fades. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know how wrong I was yet. After a while, it wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was patterns. She started guarding her phone like it was a classified government device. Face down all the time. Took it with her everywhere, even the bathroom, which she never used to do. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd lock the screen instantly. Every single time. I noticed, but I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to be that guy. Then the schedule changes started getting weird. Not just working late, but last-minute plan switches. Like, we'd agree to have dinner together, and an hour before she'd text. Something came up. Don't wait for me. No explanation. No apology. Just gone. And when she was home, she wasn't really there. Always distracted, irritated, like my presence alone was annoying her. If I asked a normal question, "How was your day?" she'd sigh like I just asked her to solve a math problem. But the thing that really got to me, she stopped touching me. No random hugs, no sitting close on the couch. Nothing. It wasn't even about sex at that point. It was like she was actively avoiding any kind of connection. Like I'd become a roommate she barely tolerated. I remember one night I tried to joke about it like, wow, I must have done something terrible in a past life. She just looked at me and said, completely flat, maybe you did. No smile. No sarcasm. Just cold. That stuck with me way more than it should have. And still, I told myself, stress, work, maybe she's going through something. But then something happened that made it impossible to ignore anymore. The moment things stopped being just in my head was stupidly small. One evening, she left her laptop open on the kitchen table while she jumped in the shower. That alone wasn't unusual. She used to be pretty careless with her stuff. But lately, she treated every device like it held state secrets. So yeah, it caught my attention. I wasn't planning to snoop. I really wasn't. I actually sat there for a good minute arguing with myself like an idiot. Don't be that guy. If you look, you're crossing a line. If you don't, you're just going to keep spiraling. And then, a notification popped up. Just a preview. A name I didn't recognize. And a message that said, last night was worth it. Can't stop thinking about you. I froze. Like, full-on body shut down. My brain tried to immediately come up with explanations. Coworker joke, wrong context, anything, but my gut already knew. I shouldn't have, but I did. I moved the mouse. The screen woke up fully. It was a chat window. Not work. Not friends. Definitely not something innocent. The conversation wasn't long, which somehow made it worse. Felt recent. Active. Flirty. Personal. Way too familiar. There were references to meeting up. To being careful. To things that don't belong in a marriage. I didn't read everything. Couldn't. My hands were literally shaking at that point, and then I heard the shower turn off. I snapped the laptop shut so fast it almost slipped off the table. I just sat there, staring at nothing, trying to slow my breathing like I hadn't just had the ground ripped out from under me. When she walked back in, towel in her hair, she looked at me and said, "Why do you look like that?" And I swear, for a second I almost told her right then. But I didn't. And that might have been the biggest mistake I made. I tried to pretend I didn't see it. I wish I could say I confronted her right there like a normal, confident adult. I didn't. Panicked. For the next couple of days, I acted like nothing happened. And I mean nothing. Smiled, made small talk, asked about her day, all while that message kept replaying in my head on a loop. Last night was worth it. That line wouldn't leave me alone. Meanwhile, she acted completely normal. Actually, scratch that. She acted better than normal. A little nicer, less snappy. Even laughed at one of my dumb jokes, which hadn't happened in weeks. And that messed with me even more. Because now my brain was doing mental gymnastics like, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I'm about to blow up my marriage over nothing. But then the other side of me kept saying, no, you saw it. Don't gaslight yourself. The turning point came 2 nights later. She said she had to stay late at work again. Same casual tone. Same lack of detail. I just nodded like I always did. But this time, I didn't let it go. About an hour after she left, I checked her location. We both had it shared for convenience, groceries, safety, whatever. She wasn't at work. She was across town. Somewhere I'd never seen her go before. I stared at the map for a long time. Like if I looked hard enough, it would change and prove me wrong. Didn't. That's when the denial finally started cracking. And for the first time, I seriously considered the possibility that my wife wasn't just distant. She was lying to my face. And I still didn't know how far it went. That night, I crossed a line. I'm not proud of it. I know people on here are split about this kind of thing. And yeah, maybe it says something about me. But at that point, I felt like I was already losing my mind trying to piece things together with half-truths and gut feelings. So when I saw her location sitting in the same spot for over an hour, I grabbed my keys. I told myself I just needed clarity. That I wouldn't jump to conclusions. That maybe, somehow, there was a normal explanation. The drive over there felt unreal. Like I was watching myself from outside my own body. Hands on the wheel, but everything numb. It was a small apartment complex. Not sketchy, not fancy. Just average. Her location dot was right there. I parked a little down the street because I didn't want her to see my car. Even typing that out makes me feel insane, but in the moment it felt like the only way to get the truth without another argument full of deflection. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, just staring at the building, heart pounding so hard it actually hurt. And then, I saw her. She walked out of the entrance. And she wasn't alone. There was a guy with her. I'd never seen him before. Taller than me. Laughing about something she said. And she looked different. Lighter. Relaxed. The version of her I hadn't seen in months. Then he put his hand on her back. Not casually. Not friendly. Familiar. Like he'd done it 100 times. And she didn't pull away. They stood there for a second, talking. And then she leaned in and kissed him. Just quick. Like it was normal. Like it was routine. I think that's the exact moment something in me just dropped. No more theories. No more maybe. Just the truth right in front of me. And I sat there, completely still, realizing that everything I'd been afraid of was actually worse than I imagined. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't confront them. I didn't yell. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just sat there, watching them like some kind of outsider looking into a life that used to be mine. They talked for another minute, then she smiled, and got into her car. He stood there until she drove off, like something out of a movie. Like this was normal for them. Routine. That word kept hitting me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time thing. You don't act that comfortable, that casual, unless it's been going on for a while. Once she turned the corner, I started my car and drove home. I don't remember most of that drive. It's like my brain just shut off to protect me. The only thing I remember clearly is gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt afterward. I kept replaying it in my head. The way she looked at him, the way she leaned in, how easy it all seemed for her. Meanwhile, I'd been at home questioning myself for weeks. When I got back, the apartment felt different. Same furniture, same walls, but it didn't feel like our place anymore. Felt staged, fake, like I'd been living in a version of reality she built for me. I sat on the couch in the dark for a while, just staring at nothing. No TV, no phone, just silence. And then the anger hit. Not explosive, not loud, cold. The kind that sits in your chest and spreads slowly. Because it wasn't just that she cheated. It was the lying, the gaslighting, the way she made me feel like I was the problem while she was out there living a completely separate life. By the time I heard her keys in the door later that night, I'd already decided one thing. I wasn't going to pretend anymore. When she walked in, she acted like it was just another normal night. Keys on the table, shoes off, that same routine I'd seen 1,000 times. She looked at me sitting on the couch and said, casually, "Hey, you're still up?" Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just been with someone else an hour ago. I just nodded. Then I asked as calmly as I could, "How was work?" And without missing a beat, she said, "Busy. Stayed late. I'm exhausted." Just straight up lied. No hesitation. No guilt in her voice. Nothing. That was the moment something inside me shifted from anger to something colder. Because now I wasn't dealing with a mistake. I was dealing with someone who could look me in the eyes and rewrite reality like it was nothing. I let a few seconds pass, then said, "That's weird." She frowned. "What?" And I just looked at her and said, "Because your office is apparently a random apartment across town." Silence. Like instant. Heavy. You could feel it drop into the room. Her face changed, not into guilt, not into panic, into irritation, actual irritation. She crossed her arms and said, "Are you tracking me now? Seriously?" No denial, no confusion, just flipping it on me. Again, I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable at that point. I told her I saw her, that I was there, that I watched her walk out with him, that I saw the kiss. And for a split second, just a second, I saw it hit her. Then it was gone. She rolled her eyes. "Wow, so you're spying on me now. That's really messed up." I swear, that reaction hurt more than anything I saw that night, because it told me everything I needed to know about who she'd become. Or maybe who she always was. I was still holding on to this tiny, stupid hope that once it was all out in the open, she'd finally drop the act. Apologize. Break down. Something real. Instead, she doubled down. I asked her straight up, "Are you cheating on me?" She sighed. Not nervous. Not scared. Just annoyed. It's not that simple. That answer alone felt like a slap. I told her there's nothing complicated about what I saw. That I watched her kiss another guy after lying to me about work. And she just shrugged. "Okay? And? You've been distant for months. You think I didn't notice?" That's when I realized she wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. She was reframing it. Turning it into something that was somehow my fault. I felt my voice starting to shake. But I kept going. I asked how long it had been going on. She hesitated, finally. Then said, "A few months. A few months." While I was sitting there trying to fix things. Trying to communicate. Trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. I asked if she ever planned to tell me. She actually laughed. "Why would I? Look how you're reacting right now." That line, I don't think I'll ever forget it. It was like she genuinely believed she was justified. I asked her if she even cared about what this was doing to me. And she said, "I care, but I'm not going to pretend I'm happy when I'm not." No remorse. No ownership. Just excuses wrapped in half-truths. At some point, I stopped arguing. Not because I agreed, but because I realized I wasn't talking to the person I thought I married. I was talking to someone who had already checked out a long time ago, and I was just the last one to find out. I always thought if something like this ever happened, I'd lose it, yell, break something, kick her out, something loud and dramatic. But that's not what happened. After that conversation, after hearing her say all of that so casually, I just felt empty, like completely drained. She kept talking, explaining, justifying, going in circles about how she'd been unhappy and how I stopped trying. Like that somehow made any of this okay. I barely heard it. All I could think about was how hard I'd been trying these past few months. Initiating conversations, suggesting date nights, asking if something was wrong, and getting shut down every time. And now she was rewriting it like I checked out first. At one point I asked her, "Did you ever even think about ending things before doing this?" And she said, "I didn't want the drama." The irony of that almost made me laugh. Instead, I just nodded, because that told me everything. She didn't avoid hurting me. She avoided inconvenience for herself. After a while, she grabbed her phone and sat on the other side of the couch, like the conversation was basically over, like this was just another argument. I remember looking at her and thinking, how are you so calm right now? Meanwhile, my entire reality had just collapsed in a single night. I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. I just laid there staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The lies, the signs I ignored, the moment outside that apartment. And somewhere around 4 a.m., the emptiness started turning into something else. Not explosive anger. Clarity. The kind that hurts, but also makes things very, very simple. I got out of bed before she did. Didn't wake her up. Didn't say anything. I just started moving. Made coffee out of habit even though I couldn't drink it. Stood in the kitchen staring at the same mug for like 10 minutes, thinking about how normal this used to feel. By the time she walked out, I'd already made up my mind. She looked at me and said, "Are we seriously still doing this today? Doing this? Like last night was just some argument we could brush off." I told her we needed to talk. Actually talk, not whatever that was before. She rolled her eyes but sat down. So I asked her one last time very clearly, "Do you want this marriage?" And she didn't even hesitate. "I don't know." That answer hit harder than everything else. Not the cheating, not the lies, because at least those things meant there was something going on, messy, wrong, but still something. I don't know, was just nothing. No fight left. No effort. No intention to fix anything. I nodded, took a breath and said, "Okay, then I'm done." That finally got a reaction. She frowned like I was the one being unreasonable. "Done? So you're just giving up?" I actually had to stop myself from laughing. I told her I wasn't giving up. I was accepting reality. That she'd already checked out and I was just catching up. She tried to backtrack a little after that. Not in a sincere way, more like she didn't expect me to actually act on it. "Maybe we can figure it out," she said. "You're being too extreme." But it was too late. For the first time in months, I wasn't confused. I wasn't doubting myself. I was just sure. And that made it a lot easier to say the next part. "I'm filing for divorce." She didn't react the way I expected. I thought that sentence would trigger something. Shock, panic, anger, tears, something real. Instead, she just stared at me for a few seconds and then said, "Wow, you're really going to blow this up over one mistake?" One mistake. I remember actually blinking at her, like I misheard it. I said, "It wasn't one mistake. You've been lying for months." She leaned back in her chair and let out this tired breath, like I was exhausting her again. "You're making it sound way worse than it is." That's when I realized she had fully separated her version of reality from mine. In her mind, this wasn't betrayal. It wasn't deception. It was just a complicated situation that I was overreacting to. I told her I'd seen everything. The apartment, the guy, the messages, all of it. She got defensive immediately. "So you did spy on me?" Again, that was her focus. Not the cheating, not the lies, just how I found out. Then something even more surreal happened. She tried to negotiate, like this was a business deal. "Can we just slow this down?" she said. "You're emotional right now. Let's not rush into something irreversible." I actually stood there for a second, just staring at her, because I couldn't believe the timing. Months of secrecy, lies, another guy, and now she wanted to slow things down. I told her I wasn't emotional, I was done. That's when her tone changed again. Not softer, not apologetic, cold. "Fine," she said. "Do whatever you want, but don't expect me to beg you to stay." And just like that, She stood up and walked away like the conversation was finished. Like she hadn't just helped destroy our marriage and then checked out of the room emotionally before I even did. I stayed sitting there long after she left. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was losing her. I felt like I had already lost her a long time ago. I just finally stopped chasing. After that conversation, the apartment changed overnight. Not physically. Everything was still in the same place. Same couch, same kitchen mess, same annoying drip from the sink I kept meaning to fix. But it felt like a place I was just temporarily stuck in. She started sleeping in the bedroom. I stayed on the couch. No discussion about it, it just happened. And weirdly, it was peaceful. No more arguments. No more accusations. No more walking on eggshells. Just silence. But it wasn't the good kind. It was the kind where you realize you're sharing space with a stranger you used to know everything about. She acted like nothing big had happened. Still went to work. Still came home. Still made coffee like usual. Except now she barely looked at me, and I stopped trying to get her to. A few days later, I got a message from someone I didn't expect. The guy. It was short, almost casual. "Hey, I think we should talk." My stomach dropped instantly, because I realized this wasn't over between them. Not even close. And suddenly, I wasn't just dealing with a broken marriage anymore. I was about to find out how deep it actually went. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the message like it was some kind of trap. Part of me thought it was a setup. Part of me thought it was going to turn into some weird confrontation where I'd end up looking like the unstable one. But another part of me, the part that was already numb at that point, just wanted answers. Clean ones. No more guessing. So I said yes. We met at a cafe about 20 minutes from where I live. Neutral place. Public. I picked it for a reason. When I walked in, I recognized him immediately. Not because I'd ever met him before, but because my brain had already burned his face into memory from that night. He stood up when he saw me. Awkward handshake attempt. I didn't take it. We just sat. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then he said something I didn't expect at all. I didn't know she was still married at first. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded rehearsed. Like he'd practiced that line in his head. I asked him to explain. And he did. He said they met through mutual friends. That she told him we were basically separated. That things were over between us emotionally. Just not legally. He looked me in the eye when he said it, like he actually believed that made it better. Then he added something that hit harder. She said you two were just staying together because it was easier. That part stung in a different way. Because it showed me something I hadn't fully accepted yet. She hadn't just been cheating on me physically. She'd been rewriting our entire history to make it feel justified. I asked him one question. "Do you love her?" He hesitated. Too long. Then he said, "I thought I did." And for the first time in all of this, I saw uncertainty in someone else's face that matched mine. I left the cafe feeling weirdly calm. Not healed. Not okay. Just past the point of shock. Like my brain had run out of new ways to be surprised. But that didn't last long. When I got home, she was already there. Sitting on the couch, phone in hand. She looked up immediately when I walked in. And she knew. I don't know how, but she knew I'd met him. "What did you do?" she asked. No greeting. No hi. Just that. I told her I met him. That was enough. Her face changed instantly. Not sadness. Not guilt. Panic. Then anger trying to cover it. "You had no right to involve him in this." That line. That one right there. I actually stopped in the middle of the room and just stared at her. I asked, "You had no right to involve him in our marriage either." She stood up immediately. "He doesn't know everything," she said quickly. "You're twisting things. I told you we were basically done." I told her I already knew what he said. That she told him we were separated. That we were basically over. And for the first time since this started, she lost control of the narrative. She started talking faster, jumping between explanations, contradictions showing up mid-sentence. It wasn't like that. I was going to tell you." Then she stopped and just said, "You're making this worse than it is." That phrase again, like a reflex, like she couldn't help herself. I remember feeling something shift in me at that moment. Not anger, not sadness, finality, because I realized she wasn't going to admit it. Not fully. Not in a way that acknowledged the damage. Not ever. And I just nodded slowly and said, "Then there's nothing left to talk about." She stared at me after I said it. For a second, I think she expected me to keep arguing, to get emotional, to fall back into the old pattern where I try to fix something she already broke. But I didn't. I just went to the bedroom and started packing a bag. Not everything, just enough to leave that night. She followed me in, leaning against the doorframe. "You're really doing this," she said. Not a question, more like disbelief. I didn't look at her when I answered. I just kept folding clothes. "Yeah." There was a pause. Then she said something softer, almost careful. "You're going to regret walking away this fast." That actually made me stop. I turned around and looked at her properly for the first time in a while. And I said, "I didn't walk away fast. I stayed long after I should have." She didn't respond to that. Not immediately. Then she said, quieter, "It didn't have to end like this." And I finally laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was honestly the first real thing she'd said all week. I told her, "It ended the moment you decided to lie instead of leave. That was it. No more arguments after that. No dramatic scene. No final confession. Just me leaving." I stayed with a friend for a while after that. Started paperwork. Separated finances. All the practical stuff that somehow feels easier than the emotional part. The weirdest thing? The pain didn't hit all at once. Came in waves. Random moments. Empty mornings. Quiet evenings where I'd reach for a conversation that wasn't there anymore. But underneath it all was something I didn't expect. Relief. Not happiness. Not closure. Just the absence of constantly questioning reality. If there's anything I learned from all of this, it's this. People don't usually suddenly become strangers. You just ignore the small changes long enough until you wake up one day and realize you've been living with someone who stopped being honest a long time ago. And if someone is willing to lie repeatedly while making you feel like you're the problem for noticing, believe what they're showing you, not what they're saying. Because the truth doesn't usually come with an apology. It comes with patterns. And I ignored mine for too long.